So today's a snow day, and I apologize if you can hear my kids outside my office door making noise. You might just hear some of that because they're pretty loud. But I want to talk about my camera addiction, something I'm not proud of. But I figured since I have this camera addiction, we might as well talk about all these various types of cameras and what I think they're good for. Stay right there. You're going to want to see this. Hi, I'm Mike Turner, your friendly filmmaker, and today we're talking cameras, and we're talking all kinds of cameras because I have a crazy addiction with cameras. I buy these cameras for my work, and I also buy them to test out on this channel. And then once I get them, I have a hard time letting them go because I love them all. It's like that K. Michelle song. Cause you think yeah. That's how I am with these cameras. I love them all. I don't know the lyrics to that song, so I just totally butchered it. But whatever, you get the point. So, let's talk about these cameras. And let's start with the JVC LS300, which has always been one of my favorites, as you guys know. It does everything well. This one is your camcorder style, obviously. It's not in the style of a mirrorless camera. One downside to it, it can't take pictures at all. You can't take pictures. Obviously, you can pull your stills from your video edit if you want. And of course, it'll look better if you're shooting in 4K, which this does. It can shoot 4K. It can also do 4K 60 externally. So it has that option as well. It shoots 120 frames per second in 1080, up to 120 frames per second. Of course, that codec is like a 50 megabit codec, so it starts to not look that great. But it's not bad, and I've shown tests with that on my channel as well. If you're in adequate lighting, it actually looks pretty good. It can do you could do live streaming through it, which I've done on this channel a couple of times, and it actually does look good. So this camera does so much; it's absolutely ridiculous. And then you got the XLR handle on it, so you can plug in professional audio. It's really, really fast for running gun work. That's what I use it for the most, is when I'm shooting weddings. And the build quality is not the greatest, but it still has held up for almost 3 years now. So definitely one of my favorites. Not sure if I'm getting rid of this one. And that's another thing about this right now. We're going to talk about the cameras, and I'm not keeping all these cameras. I'm definitely going to be getting rid of some of these, and I'm going to tell you which ones. So moving down the list, there's actually one hidden here that you don't see, and it's the Yi 4K action cam, which I've also done some reviews on my channel. Not in love with it anymore because the image quality is just not that great. You know, I've done episodes about that. If you put it in 4K, obviously you're going to get the best out of it. Anything else is just like, the 2K mode still looks pretty good too. If you shoot HD, it really doesn't look very good. So you're better off shooting 4K, which of course then makes your files a little bigger. Other than that, it's an action cam. I do take it with me to weddings. Sometimes I have it set up like on a little light stand or whatever. I'll just mount it to something on the wall or, on a pole somewhere and just kind of get like a third shot of what I'm shooting. Moving down the line, the Sony NX80, which I've done a few videos on. We'll start here and then we'll move to the Canon XF400, which is on the tripod shooting me right now. Great little camera, similar to the JVC LS300, except as you can see, it has a fixed lens, and it's a 1-inch sensor. One thing about this JVC that I didn't mention, this sensor is a Super 35 with a micro 4/3 mount, and you get that bigger sensor, so you get that shallow depth of field. That's one of the downsides to the NX80. With the 1-inch sensor, it is better than standard fixed lens camcorders. For the fact that it's a little bigger instead of a 1/2 inch, it's a 1 inch. So you're getting a better image, better low light performance. You are getting a little more shallow depth of field in there for sure, but it's still, for a person like me who's mainly shooting weddings, I like to have the option to get that shallow depth of field when I need it. And that's where something like the JVC works a little bit better than this. I really love having a fixed lens though, because you don't have to fiddle with lenses. So if something's going on close to you, you can just zoom out. If something's going on that's really far, and I mean, the zoom on this is amazing. You can zoom in and get that action. I mean, I think it's like an 18 times zoom or something. Yeah, 18 times zoom using the clear image zoom feature. Amazing zoom on this. Image stabilization built in is pretty good. You got the XLR inputs. Yeah, so good little camcorder. Great for running gun work. You know, would you shoot like a short film with this? Like a super artsy short film that you're trying to do? You know, it really depends on what you're trying to do. I guess you could. I think you could use any camera to shoot a film, to be honest. People shoot films that like get awards and stuff with cell phones these days, right? So if you're lighting things properly, you can pretty much shoot a film with anything. So if that's your thing, you just have to get a little bit more creative. But like I said, the shallow depth of field is going to be hard if you're trying to achieve that look. So there's a Sony. Now we're going to talk about the Canon XF400. I can't hold it up and show you because it's shooting me. The differences between the two, this one has more buttons on it. So you can program more buttons, not that many more, but you can program a few more to do different things. The Canon has less buttons and you're limited in what you can set them to. And that's one thing I don't like about it. So a lot of the stuff that you do through the Canon XF400 is menu driven. However, the menus are not the hardest to use. So, you know, in time you get good with it and it's not really a huge issue, but to me it's still an issue. However, the image quality on the Canon is superior to the Sony NX80 and they're both 1-inch sensors. So they're both using the same size sensor, but definitely the Canon has a better image just right out of the camera. The Sony does give you the ability to modify the image a lot in the menus. I mean, you can modify the color, the saturation, you know, knee levels, which is like the highlights, black levels. You can really modify the picture a lot. And it also does log. You can shoot an S-log. And the Canon XF400 cannot. But it does have a WDR mode, which is wide dynamic range, which is similar to log, but not exactly. So it does desaturate the colors a little bit and decrease like the contrast and everything for you so that you can throw a color grade on there if you want. And I find that does work. So it has that mode. They both shoot in 4K, but the Canon can shoot in 4K 60 and the Sony cannot. And just kind of going off on a very small tangent, I'm just waiting for the day where they create one of these camcorders with just a bigger sensor. I mean, I know they have Panasonic already has the micro four thirds sensor in the, what's that, the DVX200, I think it is, the red and black camera. So Panasonic was definitely on the right track with that. They created a camera with a bigger sensor in it and a fixed lens. But the thing with that camera, if you're not familiar with it, is it's huge. It's much bigger than this. And I would love it if they made a small camcorder like this with a fixed lens and a micro four thirds sensor on it, or even better, a Super 35. But I understand the science. If you put Super 35 on there, you're not going to get a crazy zoom like you have on something small with a smaller sensor like this. I understand that. You know, this could go up to 18 times. I mean, if I could only go up to 8 times and still have like a bigger sensor in there that I can do shallow depth of field with, I would be open to that. So, you know, Panasonic, Sony, Canon, all of y'all, you know, you should make that camera, man. I would probably buy that in a heartbeat because I really do hate having to switch lenses with this. Or you're shooting run and gun stuff where you got to be super fast and you have on a long lens and all of a sudden something's happening close by and now you got to switch it out and put something wide on it. It really messes you up. And then the other thing is you can, you know, you could put on something that's just like, you know, put on a zoom that's wide to like somewhat close, but then it's not a fast lens, right? Because if it's super wide and goes super close, then you know that's not going to be a very fast lens. They don't exist. So you're going to lose light there. And shooting weddings, I need all the light I can get. So that's usually a problem. So anyway, let's move down the list here. All these cameras that I mentioned so far are kind of up there in price, right? You're probably looking around $2,000 for all 3 of the cameras that I just mentioned. The bigger camcorders, obviously the Yee's, like, I think this is like under $100 now or something. So not that one, but now you can step down to something like this. This is just a consumer camcorder. This is a Canon M31. very old camcorder, doesn't shoot 4K, it's just 1080p. But for some people, that might be okay. Honestly, pretty much all the cameras on this table can shoot 4K, except for this one. And I rarely shoot 4K. I just happen to be shooting this video in 4K now. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I have to shoot wide to get the table. And I might want to punch in a little bit later when I'm editing. So that's the only reason I'm shooting 4K. Normally I don't. So, you know, something like this, little 1080p camera, if you're shooting something basic and you don't really need the manual controls that you have over all of these cameras that I mentioned so far. You know, you could change your ISO, your aperture, your shutter speeds independently. They do all types of stuff. You know, they have the high frame rates, you know, 60, you know, up to 60p on the Canon and the Sony. Actually, the Sony shoots up to 120 frames per second. What am I saying? It's 120 frames. Actually goes even higher than that. This has a high speed recording mode. I think it goes all the way up to like, I could turn it on and see, but I'm so lazy. I think it goes all the way up to like 960 frames per second, really, like in a burst mode that doesn't really look good. I think this one, let me just open this up. Super slow motion, 240 frames per second. Okay. Going back to the little consumer camcorder. I actually started off with this camcorder, believe it or not. This was my first camera. And, you know, like six years ago or whatever. And it's kind of what I learned on. You just don't have a lot of advanced features in there, but you can still shoot nice images with this. You just have to have good lighting. If you don't have good lighting, because it's only a 1/2-inch sensor, it looks like garbage. But it's still good because it is a camcorder. It does have, you know, the little LCD on it. It's touchscreen. It's really easy to use. It's not a whole lot of functionality in it, but it does have headphone monitoring. It does have a microphone input. And I mean, you could put longer life batteries in here and get some pretty good battery life out of it, like 4 hours, if I remember correctly, with one of the longer batteries, maybe even more than that. It might have been like 5 hours. And then of course you could plug it into AC power and just run it for as long as you want, which I do. A lot of times what I use this camera for is when I'm doing battery tests. So like if I'm testing how long a camera stays on, how long a monitor stays on, how long a light stays on with a particular battery, I use this to do those tests. And the reason is because if I use one of my more expensive cameras, these track how many hours the camera's been running. And when you go to sell them, people ask you, well, how many hours are on the camera? I'm gonna get a lower price if there's a ton of hours on it. So that's why I use this one.
Because I ate waffles.
Okay, come here.
Are these your kinds when you were little?
No, they're not.
Whose were they?
Mine. Okay, I think your face is, yeah, your face crusty. Okay, get out of here. Next. How's your face? What's on your nose? Milk.
No.
Sneak peek. Say hi.
Hi.
No, look at the camera. No, not to the cameras. Look at that camera.
Okay.
Hey, camera. Okay, get out. Watch your step. Go to mommy. Don't slip.
Come on, baby.
Go ahead. Her face was all crusty this morning time. Her face hasn't been washed. They eating food, and so they look really, really crusty. You ain't gonna see them, but we'll see how the video turns out. Maybe I could blur out their face a little bit or something. Anyway, moving on to the DJI Pocket 4K. So I've had this now for about a year, right? I think about a year, maybe a little less than a year. And what I use this for, I use it for weddings too. It's nice because it literally can fit in your pocket. Like I'll take it out of my pocket. Sometimes I'm shooting like a ceremony or something. If I'm behind one camera on a tripod, I'll take this out and then I'll just kind of do one of these and get like the audience. Like I'll just put it right in someone's face and get the audience looking on. It's really funny. I'll just kind of do one of these, just turn around, get some reaction shots and stuff. I'm shooting speech, the same thing. I might just go like this. I know people behind me. I'll just stick it up and get shots from people behind me. I love this thing. It's like a little sniper camera. I mean, I could just do like a lot of different things with it. You know, I'll get the walking shots behind the couple. You know, I'll be holding my bigger camera in one hand, and then I'll take this one out and then just kind of walk behind them. Like, so it's super convenient. I've used the bigger gimbals and they're fine, but I just prefer this. The image quality is not perfect, but it's really good, especially in 4K mode. I'm so sorry if you hear the kids screaming. Oh my goodness. The only problem I find is when I'm editing the footage, whether 4K or even in just HD mode, it's really, really hard to edit. Like it really makes my machine run very sluggish. That's the only problem with it. I just feel like whatever the codec is they're using for this, you know, it's H2, what's it, H2, what's it called? H.264? H.264, yeah, that's what it's called. So it's H2, yeah, you know, whatever. It's that codec that everybody freaking uses, the MP4 standard codec that everybody uses. But, you know, the way the manufacturers compress the information and put it into that container, it's obviously different between cameras, right? Because it looks different a lot of times and it edits a lot different from camera to camera. It's very hard to edit with this. That's the only problem. I have to create proxy files a lot of times just for HD to run smoothly, and you shouldn't have to do that. So that's one of the problems with this, but still, I really like this camera. I really, really like it. But now we're moving into this one. And believe it or not, even though this is a bridge camera, it looks like a camera, takes pictures, it still gives you unlimited recording. This is the Panasonic Fz2500, which has this crazy zoom on it, 24 to 480 millimeters, which is absolutely insane for a bridge camera. It shoots 4K. Not only does it shoot 4K, but unlike every single other camera I mentioned, it could do 4K 10-bit 422 externally, which is crazy. None of the other ones that I have can do that. This is the only one. This thing is not expensive. It's under $1,000. You could buy it used probably for like $700, $650. Not only that, it also has ND filters built in, just like these higher level cameras, the Sony NX80, the JVC LS300, the Canon XF400 that I'm shooting with. Those cameras that are around $2,000. This one also has ND filters just like that built in, which is absolutely insane. It can take really good pictures as well. It is a 1-inch sensor, so you're not getting a bigger sensor in there, so the low light performance on it is not the greatest. Also, I keep forgetting to mention the Canon XF400. I've done a low light test between that and the NX80, and you can see that the Canon has really, really good low light performance. For a 1-inch sensor, it's amazing. The low light performance out of the XF400 that's shooting me now, it's absolutely amazing. Great low light performance. This does not have a great low light performance, but if you light your scene adequately, it looks amazing. You shoot outdoors, it looks amazing. The zoom, amazing. Image stabilization, amazing. It pretty much does everything very well. It's just the low light performance. And for some people out there, you might have neat video. That will clean up a lot of noise anyway, so you could get away with using this in low light situations and probably just clean it up in post. I don't really do that just because it adds to my editing time, and I'm trying to get through like these weddings and other projects quickly. So I don't really like to I don't like having to clean things up like that. I'd like it to just be good out of the camera. So that's why I don't use this a lot professionally, but I have brought it to about 3 weddings, and I was very impressed with the results. This one might be for sale. I'm not for certain because I got to do some more testing with it because I really, really like it. It's an amazing camera. Then we jump to the Panasonic G85. I've had this now, I don't know, 2 years. Last wedding season, not the past one that we're in right now for 2019, but for 2018, this was my B camera for the whole year. I used this for, maybe about 10, 11 weddings or something. And it was amazing. Great image quality, can shoot 4K, image stabilization, which is amazing, built into the camera. Takes great pictures as well. It does a lot of different things. There's a whole lot of features in here that I never even use. But just for the image stabilization and the image quality alone, it really is an amazing camera for a very good price. The only problem with this is the autofocus doesn't work very well. Otherwise, because it has the flip screen on it, I would definitely use this for a lot of YouTube videos because it also has a microphone input. But I don't because the autofocus is just not good. And Panasonic just released an autofocus upgrade for the GH5, GH5S, G9, G95, GX85, like all of its cameras, except for this one. which I just don't get, because when I heard that they made that upgrade, I was like, oh yes, now it's going to be a great freaking camera. And they skipped over it for some reason. I guess, I don't know why, but it is amazing. It's weather sealed, has this great grip on it. It feels really good in the hands, like 2 hours of battery life on it when you're shooting video. It's really impressive. So for people who don't care about the autofocus thing, really a good bargain for a camera right here. And then it has an MP4 codec for shooting HD, but it only goes up to like, I think it's, if you're shooting 24 frames per second, you only get like 28 megabits per second. If you're shooting 60 frames, you could shoot up to 50 megabits, or even 30 frames, you could shoot up to 50 megabits. But for 24 frames per second, which, I use a lot for weddings, you're only getting 28 megabits, which is not really a very great big codec. However, if you expose your shots well and you don't have to color grade or color correct that much, it looks amazing. Moving down, we're almost done here. The Sony A6400, this one right now I have on the 18-105 lens. So I upgraded from the kit lens to this one. This camera, very similar. Actually, I can't say it's very similar to the G85. It's not, because it has so much more features. It does not come with image stabilization like the G85. However, you can only shoot up to 50 megabits per second in HD. It's 100 megabits for 4K. So again, it's not like this high level, hungry, crazy image quality codec. Like it's good. It's more than adequate. I'm always impressed with the results that I get off of it. The colors out of it, I prefer the colors out of the G85, just without having to color grade anything. You get a really nice image out of this camera, out of the FZ, pretty much out of all the cameras except for the NX80 is very similar. The image out of the A6400 is nicer than what comes out of the NX80. You got to work on this to make the image look great. Not a ton of work. Don't get me wrong. It's not a ton, but you got to work on it a little bit. It looks kind of funky, especially in the blues. This looks better, so you don't have to work as much, but it's still not as nice as the other cameras on this table. You can shoot S-Log with this. So all these people, for you guys that love shooting in S-Log, you got the S-Log modes 1, 2, and 3, I believe. All of them. You have HLG shooting for people that like to do that as well. So you kind of future-proof yourself with this camera because you have so many different types of shooting color profiles and different types of shooting modes. You could do up to 120 frames per second, and it looks good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of special features with this. Price-wise, it's not a bad price. I'll put all the links down below if you want to see all the prices and things for these cameras. It's not expensive. And of course, with the E-mount, you got a few different lens choices. And now Sigma's made a few inexpensive lens for this too. Some inexpensive primes that I'm actually probably going to invest in, since I probably will hold on to this. So there we go. And now just moving lastly to, and it's not last because it sucks or anything. It's just last because it's last. It just looked good like this on the table. Big, 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 small, 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 small. Like it's just the smallest one. It's one of the smaller ones. So the M50, very nice camera. Very good for YouTube. It's got the flip screen on it. Of course, that's something I didn't mention, right? The A6400 can flip up towards you. And it could do one of these things. And so you could kind of put it above you and get a high level shot. So the screen is okay. I prefer just a variable angle flip screen that flips out. And like all the Panasonics flip out. Obviously all the camcorders flip out and towards you. That's just a better way to go, so that you have access to the cold shoe mount, and then you have access to the tripod mount, because there's cameras that flip down and stuff. I mean, screens that flip downward, which is even more stupid than what Sony does. But I mean, some people like this. I don't, because even when it's flipped all the way up, part of the camera still blocks part of the screen. So it's just really not a good design. It's really stupid. So for shooting these YouTube videos, I never use this. I just use this for my weddings. That's all I use it for. I use this a ton for shooting the YouTube videos because it has excellent not image stabilization. It has excellent autofocus built in, which works in 1080p mode. It does not work in 4K, but it does have 4K. You could do 4K time lapsing with it, which is very easy to use, and I find it to be very useful. You know, it takes good pictures as well. This is a crop sensor camera, APS-C, just like the Sony, both APS-C, G85, micro four thirds, FZ, 1 inch, right? So smaller. The shallow depth of field is harder to achieve on like the FZ. You could definitely achieve it with the G85, a little easier, but still not as easy to achieve with the M50 or the Sony A6400. Of course, you could use speed boosters on this and stuff and use bigger lenses, which I do. And that definitely helps a lot. So yeah, some people with the M50 don't like it because there's not a huge variety of lens options for it. But, you know, with an adapter like this is a comb light, M series to EFS adapter, which I've done a review on before. It works very well. You can put on your EFS lenses if you want and use those with this, no problem. And now you have a huge array of lenses that you can use. And even though they don't make a ton of lenses, I think Sigma just made a few cheap prime lenses for this that are also very good as well. So now there are a couple more lenses that have come out. So I don't know. I like this camera. I think it's good for YouTube videos. And very quickly, we'll just run through them and we'll kind of just talk about which ones I'm going to keep, which ones I'm going to sell. And I'm kind of doing this in the moment too, because I'm really not sure. All right, so let's start with the JVC. For now, I'm keeping it, right? I have a wedding coming up later on this month, and this will be with me. So that's staying. This one has already been sold, believe it or not. I'm going to mail it out today. So I already sold the NX80. The Canon XF400, which is shooting me, that one is going to get sold as well. I don't feel like I need it. So it was this experimentation for the channel. I've shot, like I said, I've shot weddings with this. I've shot commercial work with this. I've shot YouTube videos with this. This is a good camera. The Canon XF400 is good too. It just depends on what you're into. Both good run and gun cameras. I don't think either one is the greatest just because of their menu systems and the button layout and all that stuff. I don't think either one is the greatest, but I still think both are very good. And if you take time to learn the cameras, you could be good with any camera. So they're both good. This I'm just not selling because I just use it for my battery tests and stuff. So I'm just going to keep it. It's the first camera I bought. It's just kind of something I want to keep for nostalgia's sake and whatever. I'll probably never sell this. The Yi 4K, because if I was to sell it used, I would barely get any money for it. I'm just going to keep it. It doesn't hurt to have it. The DJI Pocket, I'm going to keep it. I love it. Like I said, it's like my James Bond camera. Do all crazy stuff with it. So I'm keeping this one. That ain't going nowhere. Oh man, Panasonic FZ, man. This is the hard one right here. I don't know if I want to sell this. I'm still very much on the fence, but I'm leaning more towards selling it just because I don't use it very often. It's usually on my shelf. Doesn't come with me to weddings very often. It makes a guest appearance every now and then, you know, shows his face, you know, signs autographs and all that. Not very often. So I'm probably going to sell it, and it's going to be very hard. It's going to be a sad day. This also comes with the Vlog upgrade in it. I got the Vlog upgrade. So if you want to shoot log, it's in there. Yep. And you can do that in 10-bit external. Crazy. So it's got that feature in it too. So, I mean, amazing. This one here, the G85, I'm probably going to sell this just because I don't use it very often anymore because I'm using the Sony A6400 kind of as my B camera. So there's really no reason to keep it. It's just sitting on my shelf. Still an amazing camera, man. It really is amazing. But I just, you know, I prefer the APS-C format as opposed to the micro four thirds. That reduction in the field of view that you get when you go down to that smaller sensor really kind of messes me up. So yeah, I know you can use the speed booster, all that, blah, blah, blah. Speed boosters are not cheap, by the way. So if you're trying to use like a active speed booster, one that can control the aperture electronically and maybe even your image stabilization built in your lenses and all that stuff, they're not cheap. So the one I have is a Nikon dumb speed booster. It's a Metabones, but there's no electronics in it. And I just use that for my manual Nikon lenses, my AIS lenses and stuff. That's all I have. I never invested in like the more expensive one because I'm cheap, man. I don't want to spend that much, like $600 on a damn speed booster. They're expensive. But maybe they're a little less now. I don't know, but they're still expensive. Sony's staying. Does a good job. Don't love the menu systems. But until I get something different, this is what it is for a little while. I'm going to stay with that. Canon M50. The only reason I've hung on to it for so long is because I was waiting for them to make like a Magic Lantern update on it so that I can install the Magic Lantern firmware, but it seems like they're not going to do it. So I kind of give up. I might sell it and just start shooting the YouTube videos with the Sony. Even though I don't love it, it's all right, whatever. The autofocus in this is almost equal. I would say actually it is equal to what is in the M50. So they both have excellent autofocus now. That used to not be the case with Sony, but it's now pretty much on par with Canon's autofocus. Same thing with the autofocus in this. Amazing. Amazing. So really I don't really need this anymore. I could just get away with the A6400, and I probably will. Just because, like I said, I have an addiction. I don't need all these cameras. And before I can start testing out more gear on this channel, more cameras, I got to get rid of some of these. So if you go to MediaHammock.com/used, you will start to see some of these cameras on my website for sale for good prices. I can tell you they all work very well. I baby my stuff, so they're all in good condition. They all pretty much seem like you would get them and think they're brand new by the way they look and by the way they function. So yeah, we'll see which ones are going to pop up on MediaHammock.com/used. Go ahead and purchase and line my pockets with your money so that I can then buy some new cameras to test and further feed my addiction, you see. So anyway, that's it. It's been a long video. I apologize, but there's a lot of cameras here. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos just like this. Yep. Check out some of the videos that I've already created for these cameras, because I pretty much have created videos for every single one on the table in some form or fashion. You'll see some of the cards for that if you want to look, and we'll check out the end screen. I'll have some of those and you can watch some of the videos on these cameras. Yeah. Anyway, on my turn, thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you soon.